The big story this hour, the Aadhar privacy issue which is being heard at the apex court has now brought the right to privacy into the fore once again. The Supreme Court has in fact set up a 9-judge bench to examine if the right to privacy is indeed a fundamental right. The Supreme Court decision to form the 9-judge bench comes as the apex court hears petitions on the linking of the PAN card with Aadhar. Right, that is the big story at this hour. The apex court to now review and to decide on whether the right to privacy is in fact a fundamental right. What we understand is that the Supreme Court has set up a 9-judge bench. This 9-judge bench will start hearing arguments tomorrow to decide if the right to privacy is a fundamental right. This, of course, comes as the apex court is hearing a petition on the linking of the PAN card with Aadhar. What we do know is that though there is no specific mention of the right to privacy in the Constitution of India, it is culled from Article 19 and Article 21, which is the right to life and liberty. The courts have earlier weighed in on whether or not we are guaranteed a right to privacy on at least 5 different instances. The latest decision which the courts will start discussing tomorrow, which the Supreme Court 9-judge bench will start discussing tomorrow. This, of course, comes as the court is hearing the Aadhar privacy issue. Moving on from there, the Congress-led Karnataka government has set up a 9-member panel to explore how the state can legally have its own separate flag. Currently, the Jammu and Kashmir is the only state to have a separate flag, owing, of course, to its special status under Article 370. Let's hear out what Karnataka Chief Minister Siddaramaiah had to say.
Is there any provision in the Constitution which is prohibiting a state to have its own flag? Any provision in the Constitution? Have you come across any provision in the Constitution?
No, sir, there is a...
Did BJP people come across the provision? Then why they are raising?
Why before election is this divisive politics?
The election will be in the month of April, May, not now, not tomorrow,
Sir, they say
not
that,
next month.
sir, they say that you cannot have a separate state flag.
Say they do not want a flag for Karnataka state. Let them make a statement. We do not want a flag in Karnataka state.
They have forgotten that 1st November is a Kannada Rajyotsava day, and that month itself is celebrated as a Kannada month. And this is the 60th year of Karnataka integration, and Karnataka naturally is interested in celebrating 60th year of Kannada Ekikarana event. That is the reason why this Vishwa Kannada Sammelana is being contemplated.
Indian flag code is clear, very much clear. Every state cannot have its own flag according to law. But as a celebration they can have for other functions. But legally it has to be accepted by the state government, then it has to go to central government and parliament, etc. In that way, it has been a process now. It has started. Let us see the result, what will happen.
Federal structure of India. We have only one flag, that's the national flag. And Karnataka is not an independent nation. It is a state, isn't it? Unless Karnataka becomes a separate nation, we can't have any demand for a national flag.
नहीं, ये तो हमारे नोटिस में नहीं है। मैं भी सुना हूँ कि एक 9 लोगों की कमेटी करके ऐसा कुछ किया है, मैंने सुना है। लेकिन इसके बारे में हमको उनसे पूरी मालूमात लेना चाहिए, क्योंकि जो चीज़ें दूसरे स्टेट में नहीं है, यानी जम्मू कश्मीर छोड़ के, वो अगर किए तो उसका परिणाम क्या होगा और पूरे राज्य में भी इसका रिफ्लेक्शन क्या होगा, तो उसको भी हम सोचना पड़ेगा। तो इसलिए हम उनके लिए पूछताछ करेंगे।
Now, if such a flag does come into being, Karnataka will be the second state in the country to officially have a flag of its own. Last month, the state witnessed protests by pro-Kannada activists against what they have called the imposition of Hindi on the state by the BJP-ruled centre. Here's what other political parties had to say about the Siddaramaiah government's bid to introduce a state flag.
See, as far as the Congress government of Karnataka is concerned, the Congress government is mulling over the idea of a separate flag for Karnataka. The Chief Minister of Karnataka, Mr. Siddaramaiah, in fact, has ordered a committee and is in fact taking legal opinion to this regards. Our simple question is, the Indian National Congress, which is led by Mrs. Sonia Gandhi and Vice President Mr. Rahul Gandhi, what is the opinion of Indian National Congress, Mrs. Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi as far as this issue is concerned?
कल अलग राष्ट्र की मांग करेंगे। हाँ, फिर कर्नाटक के मुख्यमंत्री कहेंगे मुझे प्रधानमंत्री का दर्जा दीजिए। अगर हमारे देश में एक राज्य जो इस फेडरल स्टेट का एक अंग है इस प्रकार से मांग करता है, तो मुझे लगता है ये संविधान के खिलाफ है, राष्ट्रीय एकात्मता के खिलाफ है। ऐसी सरकार को तुरंत बर्खास्त करना चाहिए केंद्र सरकार ने, और वहां राष्ट्रपति शासन लागू करना चाहिए।
After the language war here in Karnataka, now the Congress-led government is now planning to have a separate flag. In fact, we understand that CM Siddaramaiah is planning to explore all the legal options as far as to have the state to have a separate flag. Now, remember, Jammu and Kashmir is the only state here in India which enjoys a separate flag. This is under the status of Article 370 of the Indian Constitution. Now, speaking to Chief Minister Siddaramaiah, he says that there is no provision which says that nobody can have a separate flag. But however, we clearly understand that the Congress government have already set up a 9-member committee and they are looking at, for Karnataka to have a separate flag. Now, remember that Karnataka already has a flag which is a red and yellow flag, which is not official. But now what we are hearing from them is that they are planning to make this particular flag official, and they are discussing as far as making the flag is concerned separately for Karnataka. Now, these members will be they have already constituted. They will come up with a design also. But we must also understand that back when BJP was in power, they had completely denied as far as Karnataka having a separate flag is concerned. But now the question that everybody is raising, is this just another political gimmick? In Bengaluru, Shrija for Mirror Now.
Coming back to our top story this hour, the Supreme Court has set up a 9-judge bench who will examine if the right to privacy is a fundamental right. The Supreme Court decision to form the 9-judge bench comes as the Apex Court is hearing petitions on linking the PAN card with the Aadhar. Meenakshi Bhanja now joins me. Meenakshi, of course, this will be a red-letter day for Indian citizens across the country as the Supreme Court, a 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court, starts hearing arguments about the right to privacy.
Well, that is correct. You know, it is going to be an all-powerful 9-judge constitution bench. This is the highest composition of a bench in Supreme Court, which will comprise 9 judges utilizing their judicial time all day from 10:30 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon to examine, process and debate issues primarily on one limited aspect, and that is if the right to privacy as guaranteed in the Constitution is a fundamental right or not. What is very interesting is today we have seen the government, as in the past, but today with perhaps greater force and greater emphasis, highlight before the Supreme Court as to how the right to privacy is not an absolute fundamental right which is guaranteed in the Constitution. It is a right which is subject to changes, which is subject to the government interventions if it deems appropriate. So that was the issue which was very hotly debated today, and the Attorney General representing the Union of India has made a submission that even a 5-judge constitution bench of the Supreme Court, which was convened today to adjudicate the issue, is not competent enough to decide on this, because in the past there have been several precedents, two in particular, one judgment which was delivered by an 8-judge bench and another judgment which was delivered by a 6-judge bench, which according to the government had gone ahead and said that the right to privacy is not an absolute constitutional right. However, what is pertinent here is once this debate is settled, there will be a lot of issues about Aadhar, which is being mandatorily linked to a lot of essential services, banking sector, etc., which is also being contested by a lot of political parties. Congress party in particular has raised an issue with Aadhar being linked to essential services. Those issues will perhaps see some quietus or closure going forward, because remember, now what is happening is we are seeing a bunch of petitions being filed in the Supreme Court on some pretext or the other, but they're not able to attain finality. They're not able to attain conclusive closure, because the primary issue, which is the sticky point about Aadhar, whether it is violative of the right to privacy or not, is still pending. And yet again today, the government digging its heels deep before the Supreme Court and saying even a 5-judge bench of the Supreme Court is not competent enough to adjudicate on this issue. And hence we are seeing an all-powerful 9-judge bench being set up by the Honorable Chief Justice of India, who will process arguments and examine this limited point of law, whether the right to privacy as guaranteed in the Constitution is an absolute fundamental right or not.
Meenakshi, couple of questions over here. If you could just break it down a little for our viewers. One is, what is the significance of this 9-judge bench? Will a decision by this 9-judge bench now then be the final word on the entire privacy debate? This of course is because on varied instances earlier, courts have weighed in on this issue.
Well, very interesting you asked that. Yes, indeed, the word or the final judgment, whenever the question is settled by the 9-judge bench, will be the binding conclusive word of the Supreme Court of India, which has to be accepted by the government of India and the citizens as well. But, going forward, what is also very interesting is we are seeing so many disparate petitions being filed vis-a-vis Aadhar on some pretext or the other. But while those petitions are still sub judice, while the main question of the right to privacy being absolute right or not, whether Aadhar is violative of that particular right to privacy, if that has been, vetted by the Supreme Court or not, while the matters are still sub judice, we have a situation which is very prevalent where Aadhar is being aggressively marketed and pushed, and it is being linked to a lot of essential services like welfare schemes, like banking sector, and that is something which is perhaps not sinking in well with many segments of the society, and that is the reason we are seeing these batch of petitions which are being filed in the Supreme Court, which will perhaps culminate somewhere tomorrow when the Supreme Court takes cognizance of all the arguments. And very quickly, for the sake of our viewers, for the sake of urgency, for the sake of bringing this debate to a closure soon, we are seeing the Supreme Court try to wrap up all this in one day's time. Therefore, we are seeing those who are against Aadhar being given 3 hours to argue their point, and post-lunch, that is sometime after 1 in the afternoon, we will see the government of India put forth its points of view on Aadhar, on the right to privacy not being an absolute constitutional right which is guaranteed by the Constitution. So these are the critical aspects which really at present have led to a lot of confusion, because their critics say that till the matter is sub judice, till the question of privacy has not been settled by the Supreme Court, how is it that the government is going ahead and pushing Aadhar mandatorily on so many walks of life and so many sectors which are so essential for daily living. On the other hand, it is the government which says that Aadhar is mandatory because it has happened in the past in Western countries as well, that whenever it deems appropriate, governments have the right to step in and curtail the so-called right to privacy because it is not an absolute.
News breaking right now. Congress has opposed Aadhar being made mandatory, objects to the linking of Aadhar with all essential services. Like Meenakshi was just telling us over there, the Constitution does not necessarily guarantee the right to privacy. That is something, of course, that has not been laid out clearly in the Constitution. It will be discussed and deliberated upon by a 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court tomorrow. They will spend the entire day from 10:30 a.m. to 4 p.m. debating this, what Meenakshi called this limited point of law. Meenakshi, the Congress now coming out in opposition to the Aadhar. Very interesting because Congress was the one which came up with the idea of the Aadhar in the first place. They are now opposing the Aadhar being made mandatory and its linking with essential services.
Well, yes, the Congress response is muted, but somewhere they have clarity at what they want to communicate. You rightly pointed out, Congress is basically opposed to the concept of Aadhar being linked mandatorily to a lot of essential services like the banking sector, like the PAN card segment, etc., because they go on to say that they devised or articulated the concept of Aadhar as a unique identification number. When they were in power, there was nowhere any point of time where they were envisaging a scenario that Aadhar would become the fulcrum of daily existence. That is the contention of the Congress party. In the past also, we have seen Randeep Surjewala in the third month of 2017, which is March. He came out heavily against Aadhar. And even now, while the Congress will wait and watch tomorrow's developments with a very interesting approach to the entire debate in the Supreme Court, where the government in 2017 is disputing the right to privacy as being a fundamental right. The party's position somewhere is very clear and indicative of the fact that they devised it as a unique identification number, but nowhere it was in their strategy to go ahead and link Aadhar to various essential services as the present government is doing. They also point out to the fact that some of the senior leaders like Jairam Ramesh himself filed petitions in the Supreme Court to challenge Aadhar being linked to a lot of segments of daily public living.
Right. Meenakshi, you've also been covering the Supreme Court for years now. Tell us this, what are you picking up from the legal minds that you're speaking to? What does the Constitution essentially say right now as far as the right to privacy is concerned? You, of course, made it very clear that it is not a guaranteed fundamental right.
Position. And, there are some voices in the Supreme Court, like senior advocate Shyam Devan, like another advocate, Mr. S. Prasanna, who is very closely linked to the Aadhar matter being pleaded before the Supreme Court, who are of the point of view that the issue of privacy has been settled in our jurisprudence and there is no need really to go ahead and revisit it. That is their objection as to why, even at this point in time, when things hang so much in balance, when there is so much uncertainty surrounding a lot of issues, what is the point of using 9 judges and their valuable judicial time to resolve an issue which has been in the past settled? That is, of course, their argument. But the government of India has lent its might to the argument that the issue of privacy is not a simple one. The issue of privacy is not an open and shut case at all. And therefore, what really needs to be relooked at is if this is an absolute constitutional right which is guaranteed to the citizens as per the government of India's version, it is not. And that is the reason today the government has said even a 5-judge bench is not competent to adjudicate on this question, because in the past there have been larger benches like a 6-judge and an 8-judge bench who have resolved this question. And therefore, even powerful larger bench, which is a 9-judge composition of a Supreme Court, 9 judges, that really holds a lot of meaning, because we are seeing almost half the strength of the Supreme Court tomorrow sit to just analyze and examine this limited aspect of law, but nonetheless very critical to everyday living if the right to privacy as enshrined in the Constitution is a fundamental right.
Right, Meenakshi, thank you for getting us all those details. Of course, the big story breaking at this hour, and something that holds a lot of significance for every Indian. A 9-judge bench will sit tomorrow. A 9-judge Supreme Court bench will sit tomorrow between 10:30 and 4 to discuss a limited point of law, whether or not the right to privacy is a guaranteed fundamental right under the Constitution of India. We will, of course, keep tabs on that, and we will keep getting you the updates on that as that story unfolds. The BCCI today formally announced the appointment of Bharat Arun as bowling coach in place of Zahir Khan, whose name was recommended by the Cricket Advisory Committee. Sanjay Bangar and R. Sridhar will remain the batting and fielding coach respectively. Listen in to Coach Ravi Shastri.
I've spoken to both the individuals, and as good as 3 or 4 days ago. And they are two fantastic cricketers of India, and their inputs will be invaluable. They will be on board once they've spoken to the authorities concerned. So there's no issues on that. I was very clear in my mind what my core team would be. And what you just heard is my core team.
Meanwhile, Amitabh Chaudhary, the BCCI Joint Secretary, said that since Ravi Shastri has been appointed the head coach, he has all the rights to pick his own core team. Listen in.
The BCCI has appointed as head coach Mr. Ravi Shastri. The BCCI has also appointed Mr. Sanjay Bangar as the assistant coach. It has also appointed Mr. Bharat Arun as the bowling coach. Mr. Patrick Farhat continues to remain the physio of the team. Mr. Basu continues to remain the trainer of the team. Mr. R. Sridhar continues to remain the fielding coach of the team. All of them will be a part of a 2-year contract commencing today and until the next World Cup, until the closure of the World Cup.
Indian cricketer Irfan Pathan was trolled on social media for posting a photo with his wife Safa Beg. The all-rounder's wife was criticized for her apparent un-Islamic avatar, wearing nail polish and showing her arms and face. The comments ranged from advising him to remove the picture to slamming him for not being a good Muslim. Himanshi now joins me live with more details on that story. Himanshi, unfortunate that again we have somebody on the receiving end of trolls, of Twitter trolls.
Right, and unfortunately this time Indian cricketer Irfan Pathan is on the receiving end. This is not the first time the trollers and the Twitterati are throwing bouncers and beamers at Indian cricketers. Before this as well, Mohammad Shami was on the receiving end, where he posted a picture with his wife where she was wearing a sleeveless a gown, and she was also trolled for this. So it's not the first time the trollers and tweeters are attacking the Muslim cricketers. It is unfortunate on the part of trollers and the Twitteratis that they are not minding the freedom of expression. There is a line to be drawn, which is again and again being crossed by the tweeters and the trollers.
And Himanshi, let's just look at that visual, that footage we are running of the tweet put out by Irfan Pathan. It is a very playful tweet. He's taken a photograph, a selfie, in fact, of himself, sitting with his wife, and he's written something on the lines of, "This girl is trouble," and all she's doing is covering her face with her hands. That's all that she's doing. What is a kind of what is a kind of criticism that a photo like this can garner?
This is absolutely normal to post a picture with your wife. It's all your personal choice to do this. But unfortunately, even after covering the face, she is being trolled. That trolls are ranging from that she's showing her arms to she's putting a nail polish, which again the trollers are saying and criticizing that it is haram and un-Islamic. So there is absolutely unfortunate that even though she is covering her face, which is again unfortunate that she has to, and again still she is trolled for putting on nail paints and the kind of attire, the kind of look she is carrying in the picture.
Right, Himanshi, thank you for getting us those details. Irfan Pathan putting up a very playful, very normal selfie with his wife and getting trolled for his un-Islamic avatar. That's all the time that we have on this bulletin. For more news and updates, do keep watching Mirror Now.